It was just amazing to see this plant be a part of the whole process and integrating cannabis into like a formal event, like a
Yeah.
wedding.
Yeah.
And we also saw stuff around like bachelorette parties or bachelor parties. Remember the pieces?
Yes, I do. They did. They had these pipes that were shaped like dick and balls. Sorry, Mom. Dick and balls. Hi, everybody, and welcome to Different Leaf, the podcast. I'm Brit Smith, and to be honest with you, my lovely listeners, I'm sick and tired of being stuck at home. It's been almost 6 months now, and I'm really starting to miss people. I just want to go to a big, crowded festival or a cannabis industry conference. I'm missing the Harvest Cup and the hazy 420 celebrations on the Boston Common. I'm missing all of it. Major events like Hemp Fest are where a lot of people go to learn about cannabis. You can see all the latest products on the market and have a quick smoke with your friends while you zone out to some psychedelic art. And it's also the perfect place to buy yet another pipe for me to add to my vast collection. But like everything else in the world right now, all of our beloved festivals and gatherings are on hold or online because of COVID. Not only am I jonesing for a good crowded convention center, I've also agreed to be on a panel at a virtual cannabis event later this month. And I'm not exactly excited to be talking to my laptop instead of a room full of real people. So this episode, I've called on the perfect person to snap me out of it. Ann Brum is the entrepreneur behind Joint Venture & Co., a business development agency that helps companies in the cannabis industry. She is a boss when it comes to putting on cannabis events and conferences, and she's been working with us here at Different Leaf to put on a local event called PlantMRKT, which we'll get into a little later on. More than just a smart cookie who knows how to throw a great event, Anne is also my personal New England Cannabis Festival partner. She took me to my first Boston Freedom Rally. We've been to the Cannabis Wedding Expo and the Harvest Cup, and probably a few others I don't remember because we did them right. So we're in the same boat together this year. We're really missing out on all those celebrations we usually go to. But I wanted to talk this episode about how the culture of cannabis has been passed down through generations at gatherings just like the ones that we're missing right now. How the teachings and the experiences of cannabis often happen at these events. And now that we're without them due to the pandemic, how we can continue to pass down that cannabis folklore. So yes, we learn from our communities, but most American kids start really learning about drugs and weed through the DARE program. And that's like at every public school, right?
Yeah, it was a pretty institutionalized program, but I had older sisters. I had already seen like cannabis and alcohol consumption, which was pretty normalized in our culture as far as mostly on the alcohol side.
Mm-hmm.
But alcohol consumption was like not really covered in DARE, but everything else was.
I remember in elementary school, we had a police officer come to talk to us. I think we were probably like 7, 8 years old. And they told us about all these different drugs, but they did tell us alcohol, coffee, and tobacco were also considered drugs, but they said those were the things you were allowed to do. So yeah, they're drugs, but there are some drugs that you can do and some drugs that you can't do. And, you know, that's how I learned about all drugs. It was a yes or no thing.
Right. Yeah. No, mine was like culturally unacceptable.
How are kids today learning about it then? Is it still through school?
I mean, I would suspect it's the internet at this point, and then through their peers is what I'm thinking. And what was for me too, learning about it.
Right. So we've always had this thread of like the community learning. You might learn through your family. I had an uncle who was a stoner. I think a lot of people had one of those stoner uncles, you know. So you learn about it through your family and friends. And then you've got like the school and the government systems. Nowadays, we've also got that social media element. And so the way that people have evolved in learning about cannabis has gone from just sort of talking to the other people in your immediate community to suddenly you're privy to everything that anybody's ever put on the web about it.
Mm-hmm. And gone are the Reagan days of like those commercials of, you know, say no to drugs and someone consuming cannabis and they're like melting into the couch or like, it's like the most ridiculous, like Prohibition 2.0 really, really ill-informed the public on what cannabis really is.
in the UK, we had those same commercials where someone was like deflated on a couch and was just sitting there watching TV. And as a teenager, I thought that looks really relaxing.
But then like the one with the crack in the egg and the frying pan and like this is your brain on drugs, da 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 da. As far as like cannabis is concerned, that is not true.
Right. The sources that we've gotten our cannabis education from, they haven't always been right. They've actually historically been pretty wrong about a lot of things. Stuff's changed a lot from the 80s to today, and how we're learning about things from when we were in school in the 90s and how they're learning in school today about drugs. All of that's changed, but also so has the research. So what we know is true has changed. I feel like today we're a lot better equipped with a lot more ability to research things across the globe. So you would imagine that the web helps us, expands our knowledge. But man, I get flooded by information and I just sort of don't know what's right. You know what I mean?
And culturally speaking, this plant has followed us for like thousands of years as a developing species. So we've learned a lot. What would be comparable with like folk medicine in a sense. Kind of the way I grew up was not really conventional medicine, and we used what my parents and their parents had access to, and different techniques and different food and different things that came from the ocean and or the land. I would remember those conversations as a kid, listening to my parents or families talking about illnesses and ailments, and like that's how we learned. It was through other people's stories and other experiences when the internet wasn't around and you're on a little island in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean and you like learn from one another's experiences.
Yeah, that's exactly it. It's that folklore. I love this, man. I studied anthropology. This is like the anthropology of cannabis folklore. Everything we've learned has been through word of mouth. When it was coming from people in your town, you felt like you could trust their experience, right?
Exactly. And once you have relief and you're experiencing some kind of reduction in suffering, you want to like tell everybody about it. And yeah, the face-to-face, the stories and sharing has been, I think, by far what's really carried the culture of cannabis to where it is today.
The bit that I'm really missing right now about being in this pandemic is that same thing that we're talking about, that human connection of passing on education and stories about cannabis through actually meeting up with other real life human beings. You remember that, Anne?
Remember. That's why I always was drawn to cannabis as well over any other substance, was like it really connects us.
Yeah.
And that community is totally what vibes with me and what has drawn me to make a living in this space and be of service in this space, is seeing that plant connect over and over and over again in incredibly meaningful ways. And these serendipitous ways too, that you just can't make it up.
Do you remember that wedding expo?
Yeah.
The chocolate covered cereal bowls. These are the kinds of things that we're going to miss out on from the events. And at the wedding expo, I also got my hair done
by Laura, who does my hair for different photo shoots and different events.
And she makes them with like cannabis leaves in there.
And the cannabis came from my garden in my yard. And it was just amazing to see this plant be a part of the whole process. And integrating cannabis into like a formal event, like a wedding. And we also saw stuff around like bachelorette parties or bachelor parties. Remember the pieces?
Yes, I do. They did. They had these pipes that were shaped like dick and balls. Sorry, Mom. Dick and balls.
There was an event company there that really thought ahead of the liability, because there's no social consumption in Massachusetts, or there's no legal framework or program for it yet. So it was interesting to hear how that's playing out in other legal markets that have more leniency for what they consider social consumption and have liability coverage around it. That was really cool. And then obviously the chocolate infused fountain was by far.
That was dreamy, dude. I still think about that. It was so silky. Oh,
It was so good. So I love seeing like the hair and makeup and then the different type of gifts that were there. There was a couple of the dispensaries that were there. The photography, just like being cannabis friendly and open is so amazing. And like the way it kind of should be, like a canna yoga retreat that we were supposed to do on Memorial Day weekend with the Love Offensive with Tara Morris.
and then COVID stepped in and said, "No, you don't."
They're like, you're going to have to postpone it next year.
Everybody start bogarting the joint big time. Like, God, we can't even share the bong anymore. This sucks.
Seriously. But I think I know the more we merge these mainstream wellness practices or sort of wellness dialogue with events, that gets me super psyched.
Do you know what I was missing really badly? I was thinking about, what was the cup that we went to at the DCU Center? Was that the Harvest Cup?
That was the Harvest Cup.
I loved the Harvest Cup because we all got together in a big crowd and gathered around to see who won the Harvest Cup that year. And I was one of the judges for the indica category. And I was just like so excited. And I was talking to all the people in the crowd. And do you remember I met that one guy who had actually put in an indica contestant? And I was like, what number was yours? And he said, number 3. And I was like, mate, I picked you to be the winner. You were so good. Let me tell you about how well dried and cured it was, how beautifully it smoked and how well flushed it was. And that guy gave me some more of the stuff that he'd grown because he had it in his backpack and he gifted it to me. What a fucking great day that was.
I mean, seriously, like that would not happen in a digital space. So like I miss that too. I'm going to a gene trader show for genetics tomorrow. They're having one out in Millbury.
A physical get together?
Yeah. And
whoa.
I'm going to pop by to see like what the dilly dally is because I'm curious. I mean, obviously I'm conscious and public health is definitely number one. But yeah, I'm curious to see like what it will be like and what this new hybrid way of integrating both digital and in person. I'm curious if they'll have some kind of technology integrated beyond just marketing on social.
Now that we're back into the post-COVID world, how are people changing the way that we're connecting and offering these events? What's going on lately?
You're seeing like a huge shift in strategy, I think, as far as finding the folks that you're looking to connect with and also producing really amazing content and ensuring that the story has these incredible visuals with it too. So making it as immersive as possible when it comes to digitally connecting. But I've been I think a lot of networking and supporting folks with different events that they're putting on. And like we've had some things going on in Massachusetts. There was a rally for social equity amendments in July, and that was great to see lots of folks come together and put on an online webinar. Would we have liked to have been at the State House advocating? That would have been like totally what we would want to do.
But there are a lot of cups and events and conferences around cannabis that are trying to go virtual this year. For example, we've got like the Harvest Cup in November. The Worcester-based Harvest Cup is going to be virtual this year. The MassCan event in the middle of September, I think there's September 19th. I'm actually going to be a speaker on the media panel, so you guys can tune in to the MassCan event. Actually, they're coalescing from New Jersey, Massachusetts, and Vermont, and they're doing one big group together online event. I don't know how it's going to work. I feel like we're going to just be sort of a panel on the screens of whoever is paying to attend this virtual event.
You're right. Like as a presenter and as a panel participant, there are certainly challenges that is different from being in person. I can remember as far as the cannabis advancement series that we did as part of the Veterans Health and Medical Cannabis Study, preparing those presenters to participate both in person and virtually unintentionally we had to do that virtually with Dr. Sue Sisley and Dr. Dustin Sulak to participate in the June one.
Mm.
You know, it was just different to prepare them for in person, and especially when it